I am going to break faculty tradition and say two really short things, as opposed to two really, really long things. Number one, I want to thank our alumni so much for their generosity and their time today here at the focus group, on the panels, and for your presence here meeting students and finding out what a wonderful group we have here in so many of our programs. I want to ask the students right now, are you standing next to somebody you know from your program? If you are, I'm absolutely dead serious about this. Listen carefully. I am going to introduce Stephanie Eddy, and then she's going to introduce Eric, and he is going to give a fascinating, witty performance. And then you're going to be standing next to people you don't know to talk about it. Okay? So right now, move. Move away from the people you know. You are not getting any value out of this opportunity by standing next to your friends. I mean it. Move.
Tell them to move forward, too.
Move forward. Move. Move. Join the table. Join the table. Okay, now be quiet again. All right, now be quiet again. Now be quiet again. My brilliant University of Chicago graduate students, you cannot practice networking by talking to people you know. Okay? Lesson number one, this whole thing is a fiasco if you stand around and talk to people you know. So those are your marching orders for the rest of the evening. Now, Stephanie Eddy from the Alumni Board of Governors, who's given so generously of her time with her advice and everything else for graduate student affairs. And here's Stephanie.
Thank you, Debbie. So to appease my bosses, I have to tell you that I am an assistant vice president for extramural funding at the North Shore LIJ Health System. Now I don't need to take a vacation day for today, so thank you for that patience. In my real life, I am a vice president on the Alumni Board of Governors. In case you haven't heard of us or have any idea who we are your voice as alumni to the Alumni Association and to the Board of Trustees. And we also work to advise the Alumni Association on their programming and their everything that they do for us. So if you have complaints, hopefully you won't have too many yet, compliments, ideas, concerns, please feel free to reach out to me or any other Alumni Board of Governor meeting person that you met. You can also look us up on the website, and we'll be happy to listen to you. I live and work in New York. I'm also happy to answer emails from you. I am in the directory, the Alumni Directory online. I want to say, first of all, that the presence of alumni here with students today is very, very important to both sides of the occasion because we are like two halves of a coin. We are here to give back to you and learn from you, and you are here to learn from us and take advantage of the mistakes and the different twists and turns, the different successes that we've had in our lives. So again, if you're standing next to someone from your own program, try to stand next to an alumni. I also want to impress upon you that if you have been a student at the University of Chicago for more than 1 quarter, we consider you an alum. It's a very low bar. We love you. This is your alumni association, and that should be pretty much everyone in this room. Yes, can all alumni please raise their hands? And that should be everybody if you've been here more than 1 quarter, right? All right, the other reason I'm here tonight is to introduce your main speaker, Eric Isaacs. Eric Isaacs, I think we have to forgive him for having a PhD from MIT. Because he is now the director of Argonne National Laboratory. Argonne National Laboratory is really, really super cool. If you have never been there, they do throw open their doors once a year to invite the public in, and it's an amazing thing to see. You can tour the different parts of their science and what they're doing. It's a Department of Energy lab that is owned and operated by the University of Chicago. Is there still a shuttle?
Yes.
there is still a shuttle, so go visit. No excuses. It's a great place. So he's got the scientific chops. He's the director of that place. He's got a prestigious career, and please welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. Very excited about this. I do have to confess that I had some concerns about accepting this invitation because it's really not easy to come up with a topic for this audience. You're all very bright, all very well educated, and so I have to think of something a bit intellectual. You come from a wide range of academic disciplines, so I probably couldn't expect an enthusiastic response from any of you if I spent 15 or 20 minutes giving you highlights from my specialty, which is condensed matter physics. But actually, if I did spend 15 minutes talking about condensed matter physics, I think you'd all see how beautiful and exciting it is. Then there's also the challenge of coming up with a topic that will resonate with PhD students who have spent years here digging into their dissertation topics, but that also will appeal to those of you who are completing masters and professional programs that are much broader in scope. And finally, I expect that all of you are incredibly overworked in school, also stressed about your future prospects, about jobs, and that by this point in today's program, you're very tired and maybe even a little dispirited. So I asked myself, what is the thing that every University of Chicago graduate student wants to hear? Well, that's easy. Fragments of early Greek lyric poetry. I know you all saw that one coming. But seriously, in trying to find something to say that would speak to such a diverse audience and such an interesting group of students, I started thinking about the line from Archilochus. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one great thing. We don't know precisely what Archilochus meant by that, but he lived from 680 to 640 BC. He lived from about 680 to 640 BCE, and his work survives only in fragments. So that meant that scholars could argue for many, many years over the exact translation of what he did mean. And since we only have those fragments, it's really only possible to know that piece of the poem. However, the poem could have read, "The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one great thing. Unfortunately for them, the lion eats both of them." But let's leave these disputes to those of you that are classicists and classical scholars and focus on the lines themselves. Over the years, this little fragment has spawned thousands of pages of commentary and controversy, and I assume most of you here have a general understanding of the behavioral differences between hedgehogs and foxes. Foxes are skilled hunters and opportunistic scavengers, and they use a variety of strategies to get food and evade predators. Hedgehogs, by contrast, have a single but very effective strategy. In times of stress, they curl up into a little ball of spines and hope for the best. So the question becomes, was Archilochus trying to say that the hedgehog, with its single all-purpose strategy, was ultimately greater than the wily fox? Or was he merely pointing out that there can be two approaches to solving any problem? A novel solution created to respond to a specific new challenge, or a go-to, tried-and-true method that can be used in multiple situations. So over the years, many writers and thinkers have considered the fox versus the hedgehog dichotomy. The most famous, or at least the most influential of these, was the essayist and political philosopher Isaiah Berlin. In his seminal 1953 essay, The Hedgehog and the Fox, Berlin said, "This poetic fragment can, quote, mark one of the deepest differences which divide writers and thinkers, and it may be human beings in general." Berlin describes the hedgehogs as those who relate everything to a single central vision, a single universal organizing principle. They see the world through one consistent lens. The foxes, on the other side, are fascinated by the infinite variety of things. They draw on a wide array of influences, philosophies, and experiences. Berlin's essay, which focuses on Tolstoy's philosophy of history, you see, I told you, University of Chicago, has inspired dozens of writers to apply this organizing principle to their own subjects and disciplines. And a cursory review of some of these titles shows that there is some real conflict between the fox and the hedgehog. The foxes think of themselves as creative, nimble, and dynamic, people who see the big picture. Foxes may respect a hedgehog's extraordinary subject matter expertise, but to a fox, a hedgehog can seem limited and risk-averse, rolling up in a defensive ball every time something starts to go wrong. To hedgehogs, on the other hand, foxes can seem glib and slipshod, miles wide but only inches deep. Foxes can be easily distracted, shirking the boring but necessary chores to run off in pursuit of something shiny and new. So Jim Collins, many of you may know Jim Collins, the management guru who wrote the 2001 bestseller Good to Great, and I've read the book, claimed that all good to great leaders are hedgehogs. Collins claims that hedgehogs, in his words, know how to simplify a complex world into a single organizing idea, the kind of basic principle that unifies, organizes, and guides all decisions. Collins continues, like great thinkers, and quote, who take complexities and boil them down to simple yet profound ideas like Adam Smith and the invisible hand, or like Darwin with evolution, leaders of good to great companies develop a hedgehog concept that is simple, but that reflects penetrating insight and deep understanding. Well, I think that makes it pretty clear that the hedgehogs are the real winners. So all of you hedgehogs here, congratulations. Just one slight problem. Greatness, in Collins' terms, is defined as a sustained period over which the great company's stock dramatically outperforms the market and its competitors. And Collins says the hedgehog concept is the key to that greatness. But in 2008, Steve Levitt, the William B. Ogden Distinguished Professor of Economics here at the University of Chicago, took a close look at the 11 companies that were featured in Collins' book as examples of transformations from good to great. Professor Levitt, who is definitely of the Fox persuasion, looked at how those companies had performed, don't tell him I said that, looked at how those companies had performed in the 7 years since Collins' book was published, and the results were far from great. In Professor Levitt's Freakonomics blog post on July 28, 2008, he noted that one of those companies, Fannie Mae, had just asked for a federal bailout. Also, a portfolio limited just to the good to great companies would have underperformed the S&P 500 in the years since the book was published. So for all of you foxes in the room, it appears that the hedgehog concept is not infallible. So in fact, later on, Philip Tetlock, a professor of management and psychology at Penn, would say that foxes are better equipped for success because they're better at predicting what's going to happen next and planning accordingly. Tetlock's research indicate that foxes generally have better judgment because they draw on an eclectic array of inputs and traditions, and they can improvise in response to changing events. In other words, hedgehogs may have single-minded determination, but that can mean they keep moving steadily in the wrong direction. Tetlock says foxes do better because they keep learning as they go. So all of you hedgehogs in the room, pack up your things. It's hopeless. Sorry. Now, personally, I have a different perspective on the fox versus hedgehog dichotomy. I'm a scientist, and scientists tend to be hedgehogs compared with a greater prevalence of foxes, say, in the humanities. I think we have both here tonight. I hold a PhD in physics from MIT, and my dissertation topic was light scattering and the bound magnetic polaron. So I am a hedgehog among hedgehogs. In my career at Bell Labs, I spent 15 years at Bell Laboratories and then the last 10 at Argonne at the University of Chicago. Clearly, I tend to find a track that works for me and stay with it. But in 2009, I became director of Argonne National Laboratory, and I soon realized I was a hedgehog in a fox's job. Because as director, I have to understand and balance the needs of scientists and engineers across 14 different research divisions, 14 different disciplines. As director, I have to think beyond disciplinary lines and lead this large, complex, multi-purpose laboratory in addressing the grand scientific and technological challenges of our times. It is my job to bring together the best researchers in the world and inspire them with an overarching vision of science and the national interest. I am also responsible for overseeing the operation of 6 major national science facilities, including MIRA, which is one of the world's fastest supercomputers, the 4th in the world now, and the Advanced Photon Source, a synchrotron X-ray source, which is one of the most complex, interesting machines in the world. We also employ over 3,000 people and over 5,000 visitors a year, and our annual budget is more than $700 million. All day, every day, I am expected to resolve problems I couldn't have imagined the day before they dropped on my desk. In fact, I often find myself facing crises that I couldn't have imagined the day before they dropped on my desk, let alone an hour. I have to keep an eye on everything from potential winter storms that could make it treacherous for our people to get home at night to Congress's threats to impose sequestration and cut millions of dollars from our budget. And quite frankly, there are times when all I really want to do is head back into the burrow with my fellow hedgehogs and focus on physics. But I also have come, and this is important, to relish the challenge of learning on the fly, of grappling with problems in real time and devising new, untried solutions, all those fox characteristics that don't come as naturally to us hedgehogs. As a native hedgehog myself, I fully appreciate the brilliant hedgehogs who make up the majority of our research staff, and it's fun for me to find new ways to support their work and deepen impact of their discoveries and innovations. But my years in directing the laboratory and its work, I have come to admire and enjoy my colleagues who look at life from a fox's perspective. And it's inspiring to watch a highly intelligent fox pursue big vision, like building the fastest computer in the world or standing up a brand new multidisciplinary institute. I learned so much from their willingness to embrace risk and make exciting intellectual leaps. Yet I also find it instructive that, as I am acquiring a new appreciation of fox's multi-purpose toolkit, some of my fox colleagues are starting to discover their hedgehog sides. One of my colleagues, who works for our communications department, is a former journalist. A great career choice for foxes with wide-ranging interests and very low boredom thresholds. But since she's been at Argonne surrounded by all those educated hedgehogs, she has found herself yearning to dig really deep, to go beyond her broad proficiency and truly master a single subject. So she's now started a master's program here at the University of Chicago, the Harris School. To me, the key to a long and successful career is finding our own balance of fox and hedgehog, of understanding and appreciating your own natural strengths, and then working to develop competence in other spheres as well. As you know, I am a professor here at the university, and I work with a number of talented graduate students. In my role as their advisor, I often talk to them about creating a strong career arc, not just focusing on that first job after school, but planning decades that they will spend in the workforce. I tell my students to think about creating a T-shape in their careers. T. For my PhD physics students, they already have taken a deep dive into their chosen subject. They've already gone the hedgehog path. But to build a solid pillar that is the base of a T, you need to go even further, to keep on gaining expertise and depth in the workplace. Now that's where some people stop. They build that pillar and they stay there. And they are unconstructed hedgehogs, and that's really okay. The world needs highly focused people with a profound understanding of their own individual specialties. But to really succeed, I believe it's important to understand the world around you and how your highly focused work fits into the greater scheme of things. It's very important. So, I think you need to take that next step to branch out, if you're a hedgehog, to cross the T, to make the bar the long, narrow, and thin fox part. That means venturing beyond your own narrow field of study and tackling new disciplines and unfamiliar ideas. As a hedgehog, you're likely to feel uneasy knowing that you will never fully plumb the depths of any of these new concepts in these other fields and disciplines. However, if you broaden your horizons and expand your capabilities, you'll find new ways to be creative, to solve problems, and to realize your goals. Similarly, all you foxes in the audience, in the professional world, we need multi-talented people who have a broad perspective, who can tolerate complexity and uncertainty, who take a flexible approach to problems and cast the widest possible net in the search for solutions. So it's great that foxes begin their careers by building that wide crossbar of the first T, but I think, just like their hedgehog colleagues, foxes eventually reach a point where it becomes important, very important, to draw the rest of the T, to choose a subject for intensive study, to think long and deeply on a single topic. Again, it certainly is possible for foxes to thrive without ever going beyond competence in any single subject. The sheer breadth of a fox's interests and information base can be pretty dazzling, but ultimately, I think there is real intellectual virtue in going all in on a single topic at some point in your career. It does require an orderly approach, a disciplined mind, and a determined character. And those are important traits for foxes to develop if they are to reach their fullest professional capacity. Now, I want to stress something here. We need to remember that there are foxes and hedgehogs in every discipline. It's true that science attracts more of the hedgehog type, and law and business might appeal more to foxes. But these two distinct ways of knowing do not break cleanly along disciplinary lines. Stephen Jay Gould talked about this in his last book on natural history called The Hedgehog, the Fox, and the Magister's Pox, Mending the Gap Between Science and the Humanities. And for those of you who are curious, foxes in the room, the Magister's Box refers to the careful little blots drawn in a zoology textbook by a 16th century Catholic censor known as the Magister. The censor's little blots are dotted throughout the book, obliterating the names of naturalists whose humanist approach to their work had offended the church. So it looks like the book has a serious rash of the pox. That's where that comes from. It's not relevant to this conversation, but I just thought you might be curious about it. For you foxes in the room, anyway. So anyway, Gould's book attacks the false dichotomy of science versus the humanities, which has been misrepresented over the years as a war between foxes and the hedgehogs. Gould stresses that both hedgehogs and foxes are valuable in every intellectual endeavor and in every profession. And that's an important point for all of you to keep in mind. Ultimately, your individual subject matter expertise, the wealth of knowledge that all of you have labored so hard to obtain during your years here in graduate school, may be less important to your future success than your ability to learn, to think critically, and to express your thoughts clearly and persuasively. And at this point, I imagine some of you are thinking, what, I've spent years of my life, gone deeply in debt to become an expert in my chosen subject, and now you tell me subject matter isn't important? Thanks a lot. Let me be clear. I think subject matter expertise is vital. When I'm hiring, I don't just look for people who are bright and energetic. I want people who actually know something. And that's an asset that everybody in this room is bringing to the job market. You have worked hard and you know a lot. My point is that your future success is not limited by your choice of subject in your graduate studies. I know that some of you wake up in the morning and think, is there anybody out there who is really looking to hire an expert on the water imagery in the poems of Baudelaire? You need to remember, there is more to you than your thesis topic. Don't assume that your academic subject matter will be the focus of your career, or that the choice of discipline will forever limit your professional opportunities. In your years here, you have developed an admirable intellectual skill set that you can put to use in ways you have not even imagined. One example, a young man who was a graduate student here at UC not long ago, originally he wanted to be an historian. His research focused on, believe it or not, doomsday cults in early modern England. And after graduating, he realized there wasn't really a big demand for experts in British post-medieval apocalyptic cults. But there was a great demand for fast, thorough researchers who can distill a lot of information in a cohesive, well-written document. So he focused on marketing his skills and intellectual abilities rather than his specific expertise. And now he has his own very successful business doing opposition research on Republican candidates for office. Depending on your own political stance, I'll let you decide how far that is from an academic study of doomsday cults. Now, I know that this is an anxious time for many of you. You have devoted years of your life to intensive study at a great institution, University of Chicago, and you're hoping that your decision will pay off, leading to professional advancement and increased personal satisfaction. And I am here to tell you that you made the right decision. Whether you choose the deep waters of a PhD program or wider seas of professional school, whether you're a fox, whether you're a hedgehog, you have demonstrated your intellectual curiosity, your persistence, your willingness to stretch your boundaries and to excel. And I can assure you that employers will be impressed by your credentials. Just as importantly, they will be impressed by your minds, foxes and hedgehogs alike. In the 21st century workplace, today, we need people who are deep and diligent, but we also need people who can look across disciplinary boundaries and make intuitive intellectual connections. And more than anything, we need teams of foxes and hedgehogs who can work together with mutual respect, who can bring both depth and breadth to each new challenge, who can face adversity with a balance of gravitas and ingenuity. So in closing, I'd like to challenge all of you to think about Archilochus and his controversial fragment of verse as you make your way into the workplace. Think about whether you're a fox or a hedgehog, and think about what lessons you can learn from your colleagues on the other side of that great intellectual divide. And perhaps most importantly, I challenge you to find new ways to join forces with people whose worldview is different from yours. Whether you know a little about a lot of things or a lot about one big thing, neither side has a monopoly on intellectual endeavor or professional success. And if you can bridge your differences and connect, you are almost certain to succeed. So foxes and hedgehogs of the world, unite. Thank you and good night.
I want you to just, excuse me, one more minute. I just want to thank Dr. Isaacs on behalf of Graduate Student Affairs, the office that sponsored this event. We're delighted to have you tonight. It's a great honor, and I think all of us took some words of inspiration. And as a token of our appreciation, I want to offer you this notebook on which is embossed neither a hedgehog nor a fox, but the graduate gargoyle, which is the symbol of graduate students here at the University of Chicago. So you can think of us.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Okay.
Thank you.